Welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast, where we feature conversations with entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and artists. Welcome back to the Agents of Innovation podcast. I'm your host, Francisco Gonzalez, and we've got another special guest here today, Francois de Neuville. I don't speak French, Belgian, whatever, but he is from Belgium. And he's got an amazing book called The Illusion of Time. We're going to get into a lot of these things. But before we do, I always want to remind, especially if you're new to the Agents of Innovation podcast, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. This makes sure that you get all the future notifications for the future episodes, as well as, go back. We've had over 160 episodes now. You can go back and look at some of these. Some of these are timeless conversations. No pun intended, Francois. Timeless conversations here on the Agents of Innovation podcast. People you can learn from, innovators you can connect with. Speaking of connecting with, in addition to liking the podcast, subscribing, writing some commentary for us wherever you're listening on Spotify or Apple. But also you can watch this. You can go over to YouTube, type in Agents of Innovation podcast and find us if you'd like to watch us on YouTube. And if you'd like to connect with innovators across the world like Francois de Neuville, he is also a featured innovator in the Fearless Journeys community. Many of our guests, past guests of the Agents of Innovation podcast are as well. And so we like to connect with them on live coaching sessions. He's already done one for us as well. We've had a book club. We also do in-person meetups. We've done meetups in places like Miami and Denver and Atlanta with great innovators. And we do a lot of great group trips all across the world. And, actually, my travels across the world have also led me to places like Guatemala, where Francois and I first connected at the Volcano Innovation Summit. So what I like to do is use the kind of network that we've been building here at Fearless Journeys to connect you with folks like Francois. So go to fearlessjourneys.org if you'd like to do that. And we've recently elevated the community to Fearless Journeys 2.0, and we love you to join. It's a lot more focus and intention on helping you build your life and career. And speaking of which, we only have so much time for a podcast and also for our life and career. And we have a man here who has dedicated a lot of time to helping others. I think maybe one of the first parts of that service for Francois was when he was just before he was 18. He joined the Belgian military, and he ended up being an officer and I think a platoon leader. And then he decided there was other things in life he wanted to do too, so that has led him down many paths. So we're going to welcome Francois, who, as I mentioned, is also the author of actually really one of the best books I've read in the last couple of years, The Illusion of Time. And I talk about this book, I think about this book all the time now since we first met just about 2 years ago now. So anyway, Francois, welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast.
Hi all, thank you, Francisco. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so it's great. So Francois, let's hear a little bit. First of all, there's another part. There's a few parts of your story that I found really interesting, especially the first time I met you. And I actually was listening to a presentation. It was really impactful. I know you and your wife like to do a lot of speaking all in different parts of the world. We met at the Volcano Innovation Summit in Antigua, Guatemala 2 years ago, where actually we were both speakers at that event. And you guys had one of the most impactful conversations, and then you even did like a small session that I went and became part of as well. And one of the things that caught my attention was this crazy story that happened to you post-military, right? You were traveling the world. You were in Indonesia. Was it 2018?
18, correct, yeah.
So tell us about this 7.6, I think, 7.5 magnitude earthquake. And then within minutes, a tsunami happens right after it, and you're experiencing right in the middle of it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sometimes you end up at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's exactly what happened to me. In hindsight now, when I look back, like, maybe it was not, because it did change my life for the better. But at that moment, that day, it was a really traumatic experience. I was there for paragliding competitions with some friends, and as I got out of my hotel, the ground started shaking so bad that the hotel behind collapsed. The city got completely destroyed, and it was followed by a tsunami who came and just devastated everything
Because
that
you're
was
right on the
left.
beach. You're literally, the
I
hotel's right
was
on the beach.
literally on the beach. A few seconds before, I was still in the hotel, so I got very lucky to get out at that time. I was on the beach, trapped between a collapsing building and a tsunami coming. I found a tree, I climbed on a tree, and I hold for my life there as strong as I could. I rescued a little girl from the debris of the hotel that was behind me. And that day in that tree with this little girl in my arm and holding the trunk on the other side, looking at the tsunami coming, I really thought deeply about life. And one of the biggest thought I had, which was not really nice in the moment, was I could have done more. I could have been more. And I was there thinking, I'm going to die. I looked at this little girl in the eye saying, like, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. In my mind, I was like, just, no, you liar. It's finished. It's over. I tried to call my wife. Cell towers were all down, so I could never give that phone call. Maybe better, because that would have been terrible to receive. And yeah, 4,000 people died that day, including a lot of my friends. A terrible event, very sad. And as much as it was really traumatic, it also changed my life for the better. Because following that event, I really went to this phase of anger. I was so mad at life. I was so mad at everything. Like, it's not fair. People just lost their life, like so much suffering, so much pain. Why? And weeks after weeks, I started realizing, well, I am still alive. For all the people who lost their life there, I have a duty. I got a second chance in life. I'm going to make the most out of it. I'm going to honor that second chance. And that day started a very long journey of personal growth, because I was obsessed with one question: how do I make the most of that second chance? How do I make the most out of my life? I promised myself to live fully every single day and to inspire other people to do the same, because I got a second chance in life. Not everybody will, unfortunately. I got this big reminder. I was like, dude, be careful of what you do. Don't die with regret. And I don't want the next time I'm going to face death, because this is going to come, I want to be like, I nailed it. Awesome. Great. No problem. But for that, I need to really live my life to the fullest. And that's a bit of a cliche sentence, like live it to your full potential or whatever kind of people say. But there is some truth in, if we're not intentional about how we live, we just get lost. We get lost in what society tells us to do. We get lost of this money trap, the rat race, as people say. I don't want that. I really want to create a life that feels amazing. And I think deep down, everybody wants the same thing. The funny thing is, it's not the easy path, because that's choosing the path of discomfort, choosing the path of growth. And that takes a lot, because per default, people end up broke, lonely, and overweight. Sorry, society is built like that. If you want to go against that, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of courage. But I think if we don't do it, inevitably we end up with regrets. And so, yeah, that was my big mission for a very long time. So this experience that happened to me, and as traumatic as it is, always reminds me of this quote that says, sometimes beautiful gifts come wrapped in ugly paper. And I think we all experience this unpacking a very ugly paper gift to realize actually there is something good in it. We don't want it when we receive it, but with time, looking backward, we can connect the dots and figure out, well, this helped me. This changed my life for the better. Doesn't change the event itself, because there's still so much pain. When I think about that, the trauma is still there, but I don't suffer from it anymore, right? Because I changed the mindset, I changed my vision, the perspective I had on that event, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Francois, I don't know, everybody has, most people don't have something on that level of like trauma, right? Although, man, if you look at the news cycle recently, a lot of people do, right? A lot of people, I mean, these poor families that lost a lot of children in these floods in Texas recently. There's just been all sorts of issues. But regardless, there's a lot of things affecting people day to day that may be more traumatic, things they're going through, whether it's anxiety, depression, job losses, divorces, like whatever. There's a lot of things people go through on a day-to-day basis. Maybe a loved one that is sick or has passed recently, things like that. So you write in your book
Yeah.
that there are two truths. We run out of time.
Mm-mm.
We all run out of time. That's something that is universal. Doesn't matter rich, poor, whatever. We all run out of time. And two, we don't know when that time's going to run out. It could be tomorrow. It could be today. It could be 50
Yeah.
years from now. But we just do
Yeah.
not know how much time we have.
Exactly. The only thing certain is that we're going to die one day. That's certain, right? Really, this double natural disaster inspired me to write my book. And the title, The Illusion of Time. Why? Because we live with its constant illusion that we're going to die later. I don't want to tell people you should be paranoid. You can die today, tomorrow. But actually you could. Yeah. That's not the idea, to live in paranoia. But the idea is to acknowledge our own mortality and be like, one day it's going to be over. Very, very funny. I read recently a study in Bhutan, which is one of the countries with the highest happiness index in the world. And they were sharing that they have a lot of conversations around death very early on. And they don't make death a taboo. They don't make it scary. It's like, death is death. And by including death in part of our days, not as something bad, as something terrifying, but something inevitable, it feels like people suddenly understand how to live better, or are more conscious and intentional about, how do I show up today? How do I show up tomorrow? If the next week is my last week. And I think that's what I want to say with the illusion of time. We should stop having this illusion of infinite time, because our time is not infinite. What it tells us is that if I know my time is not infinite, I'm so much more conscious and intentional about what I do with this time. Everything that is scarce has more value. If you don't have water, you're in the middle of the desert hiking, water is precious, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a lot of money, money becomes precious. If you don't have food, food is precious. What about time? Time is the only resources that we all have that only goes down. Money comes and goes. Friends comes and goes. Food comes and goes. Time? No. Time only is shorter every single day. No, it's not the new truth. I don't say this to people like, hey, hear what I discovered. No, it's something that we can remember, because we all know that. And the moment we remember it, remember how to actually make the most out of that time.
Yeah, that's important. Well, you do. I think it's really interesting the way you introduce the role of death, because it is something that people are very uncomfortable talking about, except in Bhutan. How do you pronounce the name of the country? Bhutan,
I think.
Yeah, Bhutan. And I read about this too in Bhutan. Maybe it was in your book. I feel like I've seen a few books mention this place, and also the high level of happiness, but how they have death all around them. They confront it all the time, and they don't steer away from it. But what's really interesting is I like the way you introduce, what I like to call the economic concept of scarcity, because this is when I teach economics courses as well, and when we talk about economics, scarcity is a principle that's central to economics, because it defines a lot of what things are valued based on scarcity, and also the fact is we have a lot of choices to make, and it doesn't matter who we are. We could be Elon Musk. Okay, he's an exception. He's got 5 or 6 companies. Okay, but even with the exceptional crazy genius of somebody like him, he still has to make decisions. What do I do with the time I have? We all have 24 hours in a week, in a day, 7 days in a week, and we still all have to make decisions. So time, you introduced this concept that, the scarcity of time, and then what you do with it. But I really love how you just put it there as well. That just means we have to not to be scared of it, not to be afraid of death, not to be even thinking, oh, tomorrow might be it. In a sense that, if you think that tomorrow might be it, right? I think you even mentioned this in the book. Well, why not just go out and party today, right? Like, why don't just throw all the money you have in the bank and but we don't live that way, because we know that it might, there will be a tomorrow. We kind of hope there's a tomorrow, but at the same time, we don't want to live with the idea that, we should wait for another day. So bringing intention to every day and every part of our life is really the best way to approach this scarce thing called time.
Yeah, absolutely. That gives us also so much perspective on what we focus on the problems we face that actually trivial. There's so many things, like we give too much importance to things that are actually So ridiculous. Thinking about death helps you put things into perspective. Like if I were about to die next week, would that really matter? Like, not really. Is that worth that I put my intention, my focus, my whole uh, well-being into worrying about that stuff? Maybe not. I think that helps you to balance a little bit again your emotions and trying to focus again on the main thing.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's good. So the other thing that I think is interesting in your book, and this goes to the title a little bit as well, right? The illusion of time. So sometimes, Francois, a day could feel so long, right? And other times, time feels like it's really speeding up. Maybe a day goes by fast, whatever. And by the way, a long day or a long week sometimes can feel slow in a bad sense, like you're dreading every moment of going through it. Sometimes, you might even be somewhere. Like I always think, like when I'm traveling, and I could be somewhere for 2 weeks or a month. Um, and sometimes it feels like I've been there for months, but in like a good way, because I feel like time really slowed down during that time that I was away somewhere. So this is how do we deal with this, like mentally, spiritually, whatever? Like tell us a little bit about why does time seem to sometimes speed up or slow down?
I'm not sure about the science behind, but what I notice is that every time we have a lot of high emotions, it seems like a week feels like a month. And I think everybody can relate to when you go traveling somewhere. It feels like time is stretching. And why? Because you have so many novelty, so many different experiences, so many different emotions on a daily basis. And life feels very rich. And I think the more rich our life feels, the more it stretches the time. Right? That's what I experience every time when I keep traveling. I've just went back to Belgium, visiting friends and family. I haven't been back for 3 years. That was really a long time. And I talked with people, my childhood friends, and like, "Oh, you remember when we were in secondary school and here and there?" And I'm like, "Whoa, I have a hard time to remember those things. I'm so sorry. I feel like I have so much life experiences in those past 20 years that my hard drive is so full of things that there are some I need to dig really far, really deep to remember some of those experiences from the past. I have like vague memories. And I mean, for me, I love that. I love the fact that, I mean, as a nomad, I travel to new places the whole time. I'm exploring new countries, new culture, new food, and I feel my life is very rich with that. And that makes me feel that I'm really alive. When I don't feel alive is when I stay in a room for weeks on end and I'm just behind my screen. And I know it works for some certain people, so I'm not judging that. But just for me, this just sucked the life out of me. I'm like, it's long, time is not passing, and I don't like it. But I'm a guy who's I need to be outside, I need to be outdoor, I need to push my body, I need to do experiences, I need to feel alive. And this aliveness is how I mean, the definition of aliveness is personal to everyone. But that's what I spent a lot of time defining after this tsunami and earthquake to figure out, okay, how do I feel alive? What do I need to do to feel like that? What do I need to do for, like, time is just, I enjoy every second of it, even when it's hard, right? I think when you can
Yeah.
get to that point, it gives you so much a better idea about how do you want your life to be.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, so let's dig into that a little bit because at some point,
Mhm.
you know, you were in the Belgian military. You were still a young man. You're still a young man now. And you decided. I can't remember when you got married, or you know, you and your wife. I don't know if you were married yet, but you guys decided you wanted to. I don't know. I don't know if it was. I don't know if the word digital nomad was used then at that, or if you thought of it that way. But you wanted to go explore the world. Tell me about the step you
Yeah.
took and the steps since, and how long that journey's been.
So when I met my wife, she was already on the road for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And now together, we've been traveling for 11 years. So it's been 11 years of being nomadic. And this is not a lifestyle that's for everyone. And I have to say right now, we feel like slowing down a little bit, stay a bit longer in one space and one place. But I had so much desire for exploring, for figuring out what is out there. And I realized, when you travel, you start expanding your worldview. You understand better. You understand more the context of life, I feel. Um, Sometimes when I look at and I have nothing against those people, but you were born in one village, you grew up your whole life there, you work there, your whole life is in between this, like, I don't know, a certain square meter, let's say, kilometer. That's
Yeah.
everything you know. It's fine. But I feel like when you go outside of that, you discover so much more about yourself, about the world, and about everything. And again, that brings so much richness to your life. And so we decided to travel. And for about a year and a half, we did pure travel. So just traveling. Then she got a job in Indonesia, and we settled down there for like 2 years and a half, almost three. Um, and so we became kind of expats. And then after that, we kept traveling, and we both built our own business. And so now we're more nomad because we work, we travel, we live abroad. We just need an internet connection. And I absolutely love it because that gives us the opportunity to do amazing experiences all over the place. I mean, all over the world, uh, while I'm still working, like during the week. But if I go do a weekend trip, suddenly I'm in a jungle, I'm in a desert, on an island. I can go diving and I can go climbing a mountain. Like, I really love to have this proximity with nature. And again, I have to admit, I'm a little bit addicted to novelty. I feel like every time I go to a new environment, it just feeds my mind with new things, and that helps me see different things and be more innovative. So that's really important for me. The only downside of it is that everything we own is in a backpack. It's great. We have full freedom. I mean, we traveled here. So we just in Georgia. We flew. I had 15 kilos and my wife had 14 kilos. So about like 30 pounds each in our backpack. That's all we took. That's all we need. That's all we have. I have a bit of gear for expedition and stuff. That's on the side, but this is all core stuff. And we play this game every year. Like, okay, let's try to name everything that is in our bag. And if something we cannot name, then we don't use it enough. So in the end, we really narrow it down to what we really need, not what we want, what we need. And I think that helps to feel so free because we know we can move tomorrow. It takes about 15 minutes to pack, and then we're in another place. Now, we value adventure and novelty more than comfort. And everybody has different ranking of their own value. Some people value certainty and comfort more, and that's fine. But as long as you know what is your hierarchy of value for yourself, and you create a life that is really aligned, right?
Yeah, so look, there's a lot to unpack there. No pun intended. But obviously, I talked to you a little bit about how I just did this Camino in Spain for 14 days, where I was just with a backpack for 14 days. So, Francois, you and your wife are on like a multi-year Camino, basically, right now with that backpack that you just described. And it's really interesting because you're also living so on one sense, you're living this very rich life of travel, exploration, being able to kind of have this freedom to move and do all these adventures all across the world. We're going to talk about some of those adventures coming up here. But on the other sense, you're living a very minimalistic life, and that gives you that freedom to move, but it also just shows you, it's kind of interesting. Like, people value different things, like you just said. Some people put the value in the car. Maybe it's the Rolex. Maybe it's the like in cars and houses and like whatever, like, but then some people put the value in, this freedom, travel, all these sorts of things. So what's really interesting to me, about this experience for you, first of all, you talked about the moving, just the simple getting up, and I wouldn't even say you have to move somewhere, right? Just the act of traveling, right? Just leaving your neighborhood, leaving your city, leaving your country. It could be for a week, right? Totally changes your perspective. And I could think of travel experiences when I was young, like going from Florida to California when I was 8 years old on a trip, right? Going to Philadelphia, going to New York City, like 15 years old, first time in New York City, even though I didn't grow up in like a farm in Iowa or something, right? Like, I grew up in South Florida, pretty metropolitan area, but wow, New York City, you see that with your eyes. Yeah. And then when about 12 years ago, I go to Shanghai for the first time, and I was like, the eyeballs just got bigger than New York City, right? It's like, holy cow. So I just think your mind just opens but it's not just like seeing a bunch of skyscrapers, but it's just having different kinds of experiences. Like, I was talking to you about my recent experience in Serbia. And for those who might have listened a couple episodes back, I had somebody on here, Vuk Velebit from Serbia. But, you know, one of the things, I was there for 4 days. I got really immersed, but I came out of there going, I just had this immense education in Serbia, a place I really hadn't thought much about before. It's just,
No.
you know, there's a lot of places in the world, not a lot of places to think about. And I was like, wow, this is actually a really cool place with amazing, very rich, deep history. A lot of places around it I would like to explore. You're not too far from there right now, down in Georgia. Yep. And we were just now having a conversation about your own experience in Belgrade some time ago. But going somewhere gives you an immense education as well, changes your perspective on the world, geography, everything. So it really is, I think, one of the greatest educations. But again, I go back to this point of you having this freedom of movement, minimalistic lifestyle. People value different things. You and your wife have put a value into this nomadic experience. You've also learned that sometimes being a nomad all the time it comes with its own challenges, and maybe you want to slow down a little bit and spend a little more time, slow it down somewhere. But yeah, maybe you can highlight a few of those aspects I talked about.
Yeah, there is one thing that's really interesting, is a lot of people are chasing a problem-free life. It's an utopia, is it like this? Like, it's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's a fantasy. A problem-free life does not exist. There's always going to be something. Life will always require effort, and we're always going to have a period of uncertainty, and we're always going to have pain when we're not on track or when we need a recorrection. So the idea of to create a better life, focus on creating better problems to solve. I love that idea, because when you choose your problems, you actually empower yourself to face them. And I mean by that, being a nomad means we need to book planes. We need to find apartments in different places. We need to adapt with the food, what's available, what's not, culture, language, different currencies, blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of things. But all of those things we chose. And so we like, oh, that's my choice. Of course, it's hard here. I need to spend hours with the immigration to figure out my visa and understand the taxes and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's my choice. Too often, people are stuck in a situation where they keep blaming the circumstances and they forgot how much of a choice they have. And I think when you travel, you force yourself to make decisions every single day. Where do I sleep? Where do I eat? Where do I go? Where do I visit? Etc. It sounds easy. It's exhausting after a long time. We traveled for a year and a half, non-stop traveling. We had to take a holiday. Because like, we are traveling already. Yeah, we need a holiday. We just need to stop making decisions for 1 week. Because every decision is like, oh yeah, if we choose that, we could have done that. The FOMO, the regrets, the blah, blah, that was really intense. But what I want to say is that traveling gives you the opportunity to train again this decision-making process, to remember how much of your life is your responsibility and how much of a life is a choice. And I think when you're stuck in an environment for too long, we tend to forget that. And that's exactly when you meet someone, and maybe it's yourself, when you keep complaining about the same thing over and over again for months, for years, for decades. And an external person would look like, change it. Like, oh yeah, but you don't understand, I can't, and this and that. Your choice. I think this is very empowering to remember that we have the choice. And that's something we decided with my wife to do. It was actually her idea to say, if I'm not happy, I change. We're like, okay, let's make that the mantra. Anywhere we go, if we're not happy, we change. We don't try, I'll book a plane ticket here. I need to love it here. Otherwise, like, no, if you don't like it, just change. Well, it's going to cost you a little bit more money, but what are you going to regret the most? And I think that's what matters. If we focus every day on what makes us happy, and be careful when I say what makes us happy, we should do that. Yeah, that doesn't mean that we should shy away from discomfort or effort, right? If I think about the best example, relationships should not be hard, but they do require effort. That makes sense, right? So when I say like do what makes you happy, it doesn't mean like you should not do what's hard and not do what requires effort. That's nothing to do with each other. But I think that's one thing that traveling really remembered us is that we choose our problems, and that's very empowering.
Yeah, you know, one thing I've noticed a lot with traveling requires constant problem solving, as you mentioned. So yeah. I always like to highlight that because it's it's one of the top characteristics, of the entrepreneur is being a problem solver. So that's why I see this like consistent pattern of a lot of entrepreneurs who are also travelers. And they may not be digital nomads, but they just like to travel. And when you travel, the more often you travel, the more you got to learn a new subway system, And by the way, as good as I am at navigating these things, I always miss a stop somewhere, and then it frustrates you. But I did this in Madrid recently. Actually, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, how did I miss that connecting stop? Maybe I was looking at my phone. I don't know what I was doing, but I mistimed something. But I could have been frustrated, but I literally, because I preach this all the time, I said, hey, this is just part of becoming a problem solver, right? This is just a problem I got to solve right now. But anyway, speaking of choosing your problems, I guess you could say, you also write in your book, and this is a hard thing for a lot of people to hear. So I really want people to hear you explain what you mean by this. Suffering is a choice, is what you write. Tell us a little bit about why you believe suffering is a choice.
Yeah. I'm not the first one to write about that, but I think it's always a good reminder to have that pain is part of life. Pain is just your body telling you that something isn't right. That being physical pain or emotional pain, right? Like, hey, it's an alarm system. Great. Without pain, we would die with no warning. So pain is great. Pain is not a problem. The problem is what we do with pain. Is how we label pain, and we like to control everything. Our world is very complex. Every time something does not go the way we want, we don't like it. We tend to resist life itself, which is pointless. But resisting life, we create this non-acceptance of what is, creates suffering. So pain will always be there. What we do with the pain is either suffering or letting go. The best example, and I share this in the book, when you see a child falling on the ground, hurting himself, pain, starts crying, yelling, it's hard, it hurts, full expression of the pain. And then after, making a decision, like, okay, my tears are gone, now I'll go play again. As adults, somewhere along the way, we have pain, like you lose your job, you lose something or whatever it is, and then we resist that reality. The longer we resist it, the longer we create this suffering. What is, like when I was thinking, is tsunami and an earthquake good or bad? It is not neither good or bad. It's just a natural event. It is just there. It kills people, so we label it as bad. Fair? Now, there is a lot of pain there in what happened, in what I experienced. Really painful emotional pain, a little bit of physical pain. But after, this resistance of what happened created the suffering. That created the anger. Like when I was saying I was mad. I was like, screw your life. That's not fair. That's not good. Why? We keep asking those questions because we resist the reality. The moment we accept that we can't change the past, this is it. This is set. This is done. The only thing I can do is to see how this impact my life, in which sense. And, we talk in post-traumatic stress disorder, and there is also post-traumatic growth. I'm not saying you can choose that, right? Like if you see someone who has been traumatized, like, hey, what have you learned there? Like, I mean, if you would have told me that 2 days after the tsunami, I would have punched you in the face. Like, come on, screw you, right? But there is a moment when we can also self-reflect and be like, okay, this is a very painful event in my life, and I can't change it. And then we go through phases of grief or whatever is the process that we need to go through. But then we can remember that suffering is a choice, is the choice to not accept what is. Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, is explaining so well how we can never take from another person the ability to choose your inner stance. Right? And I think that's, again, I decide what I want to experience right now. It can be a choice. It can be the way, it's a matter of perspective a lot. Right? And it took me months to get there. It took me writing the book, trying to really process everything. But in this case, to be able to say, hey, this was fucked up. This was a traumatic event, and it did change my life for the better. Am I happy it happened? Absolutely not. But somehow I can be grateful for the learning I got from it. The pain is the same, and the suffering kind of faded away.
Yeah,
That's
well,
how I would explain
that's
it. Yeah.
really powerful. I think what's interesting when people listen to this is you've really done a good job, I think, of distinguishing between pain and suffering. Like pain is inevitable, and that's why I think you talk about how suffering is a choice. What's also interesting in your story, and you write about this in your book, and I've heard this from you directly and a little bit here. Um, like you said, it wasn't like the trauma of going through something like what you went through. So you survived. Like you're the good story in this, even though the moments,
Yeah.
the hours, and then even the devastation you saw around you, the friends that you lost that day, the 4,000 people that died. I mean, it's a sad. We should be sad. We should grieve. We should have all those feelings. If we don't, we're not human, right? But you went through this like process, and then part of the story as well is one of the friends that was with you that survived within a couple of months died in a plane crash too. So then you had to go through like another part of that grief. So you talk about this process of the grieving and the anger and the pain, but somehow you ended up on the other side after many, many months of going through it. And I'm sure there are things that may come back that trigger you a little bit.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
remember the day that we were in that little session with you in Guatemala and it was thundering. And you
Yeah.
told me afterwards, man, I heard that thunder and I thought of that day of the
Yeah.
earthquake, because the thunder was so
Absolutely.
strong. So, and that's, 7, 8 years later. So I think people need to, it's kind of one of these things where you go through this process, but on the other side, you come out stronger in some sense, right?
Absolutely.
You really
Yeah.
can. Or the opposite, some people don't, right? Some people could be spending their entire life in that suffering. I think there's how do we become the one, person who's got the positive, like optimistic, grateful, stronger mindset versus what happens with the person that wallows in that grief and suffering and can't get out of it?
This is a very good question. I'm not sure I have a straight answer for that because I think the only thing I could say is taking the time to explore the feelings that you experience and to really acknowledge those feelings is already a big step. This is the awareness step to be like, okay, this hurts. This is why it hurts. This is how it impacts me. And then it's choosing what makes the most sense for me right now to keep living. Do I take that as a lesson or do I take that as a prison that's going to like lock me in those negative thoughts and in this non-acceptance of reality? Now, I'm not an expert in grief. I'm not an expert on acceptance. I think different scenarios, everybody is a little bit different. But the more you sit with it, the more you acknowledge that this is real, because denial is, I mean, this is the part of grief, right? Denial. Like you deny the thing ever happened. You try to move to focus on something else. I think we should not be afraid of focusing on that hurts. That is really painful. I lost a friend or I lost my job. That really sucks. And I think having around you some people who can really hold a space for you to be seen, to be heard, to be listened to is also priceless. Because a lot of time when you go through the experiences, you feel very lonely. Nobody can understand me. And yeah, maybe nobody can understand you because your situation is very specific. But I hope that you have someone in your life that can just hold a space for you so you can express all of that. Sometimes just putting words on feelings helps so much in the processing, right? And then after, as I said, I'm a very rational person. So someone who is really emotional, like my wife, she would say the completely opposite. But with my mind, I'm like, okay, what makes the most sense right now? How can I acknowledge what happened and also figure out how to move forward without diminishing that? And I think that's a personal journey. But I mean, looking on the other side, I mean, yeah, or denying what happened is definitely not going to help, um, for sure. And this thing of the pain and suffering, this is so interesting because I carry that learning through everything I'm doing. Like the way you do anything is the way you do everything. I love that quote. You learn something somewhere, like you learned in traveling, making decisions, problem solve. You can take that in business. Great. So everything is a learning ground, right? I was recently in the Amazon jungle. That was the second time I was in the jungle. The first time was like deep jungle in Papua. And I remember, attacked by mosquitoes. It was terrible. It hurt, and I was getting crazy. I was just like, I kept yelling, like, make it stop, make it stop. I was getting that. I was fighting the jungle. I was fighting something I couldn't change. And I felt miserable. I was so tense. This time, I was in the Amazon jungle alone, attacked by bees, mosquitoes all around. And I was like, I can change it. I can get crazy right now. It's not going to change anything. And yes, if I was got stung, or if it bites, like, it hurts. But this is what it is. I cannot go around it. And it helped me to go through hard situation with so much peace, to acknowledge that hurts. This is painful. I'm not going to suffer from it. I'm just going to see the pain, acknowledge the pain, and then, okay, what can I do? This is what it is. And I think this is this wisdom to remember what you can control and focus on controlling that specific thing instead of trying to control what you can't.
Yeah, well, those are great words. I mean, we've heard that from a lot of people, controlling what you can control and what you can't. Like, why get worked up about it, right? I mean, it's just like, you can control your emotions, you can control your reaction. And by the way, it takes a lot of life lessons and learning over time to be able to do that, right? I mean, being angry is something you got to like learn to control over time if you're like susceptible to that. But anyway, I think what you're also saying is anytime you encounter intense pain or trauma or anything like that, not to bottle it up, right? Confront it, right? If you don't confront it, you're going to be dealing with or let it be, right? Like you gotta let it be. The Beatles, right? I mean, they have some great wisdom.
For sure.
Well, and also sometimes you have had this instinct, I guess you could say, to always be getting out of your comfort zone. Always. So, by the way, when we get out of our comfort zone, that means, people don't realize because it sounds all catchy. It also means being open to experiencing discomfort. Nobody wants to be discomfort. In fact, have you read the book yet? We've talked about it, The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter.
Of course, I read it. I loved it.
Yeah, great book, right? So he talks about this idea of like we are in a comfort crisis today because it's great to be comfortable. It's great to have, like, by the way, we were talking about this yesterday, right? Power, air conditioning, all these things. These make podcast work. These make being in an inside environment in a hot. You're in Georgia right now, the country. I'm in South Florida. It's summer. It's hot. It's humid. We love this air conditioning, right? But we can get too comfortable with all these creature comforts, and therefore we lose that ability to want to go outside, be in nature, experience what makes us human in a sense. But Francois, you take this to the next level. I know you have this company called Uncharted. So I'd love you to talk about that, but also you have done some, like being in a tsunami and an earthquake in Indonesia seems to be like that wasn't enough for you getting out of your comfort zone. You've now you've trekked the Pacific. Tell us about the walk you did on the Pacific between, I think, Mexico and Canada, and then recently about your time alone in the Amazon. These seem like really crazy experiences.
And it was. So what I truly believe is that comfort is the enemy of greatness. When we are in comfort for too long, we stop innovating. We stop chasing improvement or change, right? I think every man has a comfort trap, a routine, a story, a lifestyle, or something that is slowly consuming him. And I'm not anti-comfort by looking for discomfort all the whole time, but I think comfort should not be the end goal. We've been living in discomfort for the majority of human evolution. We are now in an amazing time of comfort. Great. I think if we manage to make comfort a baseline, it's amazing. But then we should seek discomfort on purpose, because discomfort really makes us stronger. It makes us greater as people, right? And so that's something I've been chasing a lot in my life, to push the limit, to find the limit, to break the limit, to go a bit beyond, to see how it builds me. Last year, I walked from Mexico to Canada. That was 2,700 miles of nature. It was absolutely incredible. And it was more an endurance test to be out there in nature for so long. 5 months it took me to hike the whole trail. It's it was absolutely incredible. And I wanted to push even a bit further. And I went a few months ago alone in the Amazon jungle for a solo expedition. That was the hardest things I've done, the craziest things as well. What was interesting is when I told people, I'm going to go solo in the Amazon jungle. I'm going to find the source of a river. I'm going to hike from the source high in the Andes at more than 14,000 feet. And I'm going to paddle after all the way down to the confluence deep in the Amazon jungle. People were like, are you aware of the risk? What about all the dangers? Like, no, I'm very aware of the risk. I've been studying for months, like the fauna, the flora. I've been studying the weather patterns, the maps. I've been learning so much for myself as well in wilderness first aid. I've been going through an intense physical and mental preparation, like really intense, to be ready to get there. Now, it seems like we always focus on eliminating risk, like if it's a bad thing. Risks are not bad. It's just a possible outcome. It hasn't happened yet. Now, real risks, they wake you up. They make us sharp. And I think in our modern society, men, and I want to talk about men because it's really what I focus in my Men Uncharted program, is that this life makes us soft. And a lot of men are slowly dying from boredom. They are under-challenged. Now, I'm not talking about stupid danger and putting your life like on the line for no reason, but I'm talking about calculated risk, about going a little bit beyond, doing something when you're not sure 100% if you're going to be able to do it, not survive it. And that was where I a little bit screwed up when I was in the Amazon. I found myself in a place, in a situation where I was in a very dangerous river in the middle of the canyon, in the jungle, alone, paddling, and the river was stronger than I was. And it was really humbling to find myself pinned down in the water, trying to not die, not drown, fight for my life, to breathe. And I realized there, okay, this is maybe a little bit too far. My chances of survival should be higher than my chances of success, for sure. I can play with success, but play with survival is not really fun. I had to rely on luck to make it, and I think that was a mistake. Once again, I'm happy I made it out in one piece. I learned so much in that experience, but I really learned a few things. First of all, risks are not bad. If you control them, it just makes you step into the next level of strength, self-mastery, resilience, etc. Discomfort is trapping us. That makes us softer and softer and softer. We feel something is wrong, especially as men. We need to reignite that fire, to go push ourselves, to feel like, to feel this raw energy. And I'm not saying we should stay in that energy the whole time. Balancing the masculine and the feminine, this is really important. I think there are moments for one, moment for the other. There's a moment for comfort and moment for discomfort, right? If we keep avoiding risk and staying in our comfort zone the whole time, we're going to end up with regret. A quote I love so much is saying that the pain of discomfort will never be as great as the pain of regret. And as I said, I made this promise to myself on the last day of my life, when this is going to come, I want to be like, wait a minute, I nailed it. And I know I'm not going to be able to say that if I don't take risks, if I try to play it safe. So the message is like, play bold, play big, be bold, right? That's the essence of what makes us feel alive. Now, a lesson that I learned there is that I'm always the guy who goes faster, go further, push one more, like keep going, go harder, right? There, I learned that it's not about how hard I can go, but how kind I am to myself when things become hard. Because in those kind of expedition, it's about self-care. And as I said, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. It's the same in life, in every aspect of life. It's about how you care for yourself when things are tough. That being in business, that being in relationship, etc. So it's kind of figuring out like how to regulate your emotions, how to think clearly again, how to acknowledge the difficulties, how to acknowledge the pain, how to make the best decision that's going to bring you forward in the next move. That was a huge learning. Next to how to deal with fear. I mean, when you're alone in the jungle, I was paddling in an inflatable boat with caimans, piranhas, and anacondas in the water. I was sleeping, there were jaguars around, and all kind of things that you don't know what it is. And you're sleeping alone and you listen, and like my body was in constant state of alertness. It was fascinating to be like, okay, I need to regulate those emotions, or I'm just going to burn out. And what do? I'm still here in the middle of the wilderness with hundreds of miles of just nature and nothing else around. It was such a humbling feeling to be there, and such a luck to spend time with myself, putting myself through all those different challenges and learning from them. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to different tangent, but I think there was so much in there for growth, so to do hard things, especially as men.
You talked about risk. I think that's interesting, because it's like you mentioned kind of. I think you said the term controlled risk or something like that. I think it's important when you're saying that, because when you're taking a risk, a lot of things are out of your control, right? But I think what I always ask myself when in a decision that seems bold and seems risky and definitely moving out of the safety comfort zone area, I always ask myself this question: if this fails, what's the worst that can happen? So, Francois, in a situation where you're going into the Amazon, if the worst that can happen is death, then you might want to rethink that, right? But if the worst, yeah, by the way, I'm not even going to ask about the Amazon thing, because I think there's probably loads of risk there, right? But if the worst thing is, if I'm like, hey, I want to leave, I'm going to leave my job to go start this entrepreneurial venture. What's the worst thing that can happen? It fails. It doesn't succeed. And, by the way, there's thousands and thousands of other jobs out there that I could go get, maybe even the one I left.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, okay, when I think of like, what's the worst that can happen? That's kind of it. You can think about this in a lot of scenarios. I just always suggest to people, like,
this is good.
First of all, we shouldn't be just totally playing it safe all the time, because what is that? I'm thinking about the moment, and as I'm listening to you talk about risk and regret, I love your line there that the pain of regret will be higher than the pain of risk. But I'm thinking about 2018. You're sitting on that beach. You're hanging onto this tree. By the way, everybody should read your book, The Illusion of Time, to actually get this story from you, because it's intense, and it's gripping, and it's actually real, which is what makes it more intense. And you're holding on to this little girl, and the waves. People don't realize you're talking about these waves. It wasn't just like one wave, right? It's just constant for like an hour plus.
Yeah.
And you're like, this tree's not going to make it. I'm going to need to like take a moment of risk and run up the beach. You're like calculating how far this water's going and how much time you have, right? But in those moments, you actually believe you're going to die, and you have tons of regret on that tree. You're sitting there. I mean, you talked about it earlier. You were already having regrets. I'm just wondering, Francois, I hope you have a long and prosperous life.
Thank you.
But if that tsunami happened today and you're on that tree, given everything you've done over the last 7-8 years since, would those regrets still be there, or do you feel like you've been living that life?
No, I've really been living that life. I really feel like my relationship with death is I have so much more peace nowadays. I don't want to die. Still have a lot of things to experience and places to go. But I feel more at peace than before, because I'm living with so much intentionality every single day. I think that really changed a lot, and I'm happy. That's a great question, and also a good moment for me to reflect. And like, I can generally say, yeah, it's different. I'm more prepared, because I think I live fully. I think the more full your life is, the less scary death becomes, right? And that's why I'm encouraging everyone to keep living those things that make them feel alive. And to go back to what you said, it's making the difference between real danger and perceived danger. And that's exactly what you said. Like, what's the worst consequences? Usually we live our life stressed out by perceived danger. If you don't get the job, your life is not in danger. No, you might be a bit uncomfortable in the weeks after, because you have no money or whatever the situation is. But this is not real danger. When you put yourself in a real danger scenario, you remember, oh wow, okay, all the other stuff just happening in there. I'm just creating the whole worry loops and suffering for no reason. I can be paying attention to stuff, but dwelling on problems that are like just possible outcomes in the future that did not happen yet. That, I mean, wow, wow, wow. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes just go jump out of a plane. You'll remember what fear is, right? Remember what danger feels like. And then after, when you're like, oh, I'm late for the appointment, like, what? Okay, I'm late for the appointment. I need to do things better next time. I'm not in danger. I'm going to survive, right? That really helps to regulate the nervous system. And when you face real danger the whole time, it also teaches you a lot about yourself, because you need
Yeah,
to regulate, and
absolutely.
you cannot say it's unreal. It's very real.
Well, I know
Yeah.
we just have a few more minutes here, but I
Yeah.
wanted to just, if you could tell our audience a little bit more about what you're doing with Man Uncharted, and I know you have a big emphasis on men as well,
Yeah.
and you mentioned that briefly there, but tell me how can people get engaged with you through Man Uncharted? What are you doing?
So Man Uncharted is this concept of growing through doing hard things. And so I'm gathering small group of men, and we go in the wilderness, and I'm creating their container to find your limits or push them, depending on the level of expedition you want to join. The idea is to, through physical challenges, we mentally grow, we physically prove ourselves. Actually, I mistakenly said the word prove, because the idea is not about proving something, it's about remembering who we are. It's about tapping again in that fire, in that edge that we all have as men, right? I know a lot of people are under challenged. You feel like life is fine, life is okay. Where's that edge again? We all have this energy. You have this feeling of like, I want to push it. I want to see. I want to remember who I am. And that's what I create, taking those men in expeditions. And what do we do? Well, you don't know, first of all. It's a secret. Every day is different. We go in the wilderness. We navigate using map, using compass. We make food, make fire. We hike, we climb, we paddle, we swim. We do all kind of things that are really pushing you to the edge of comfort. This is a full discomfort week. Why would you join? Because it feels like scary. Because you know the growth on the other side of that is huge. And this is a safe, controlled risk environment. And on top of that, it's the brotherhood. We miss brothers around us. We've evolved for the majority of the time, men having other men where we were hunting with, fighting with, etc. The circles around the fire, all of that is gone. We are so isolated from other men. We need a group of guys who are like helping us to tell us what we need to hear, to inspire us, to push us, to kick us in the ass from time to time. We need this group of brothers. That's something I had when I was in the military, and that's something I want to recreate for myself in my life because I miss it a lot. And so that's what I'm creating through those unique, challenging expeditions. And some very exciting are coming. Next year, I'm going to host 4 of them in Asia, most in Asia. Also one here in Georgia. Through desert. And the next one is in September in Namibia. We're taking a group of 6 guys, and we go for 9 days in the desert, one of the most hostile environments on Earth. We're going to cross dunes, cross deserts, and do so many great activities to bond and to just find that edge again, find that fire again. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. This is just everything I love being put together.
That's great. I know you did something in Colombia last year as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, if people want to find you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
The best is to just follow me on Instagram. I'm posting there videos of the past expeditions, of the upcoming expeditions. You'll see a lot of beautiful scenery and some of the crazy stuff I've been through. I'm not like really selling anything. I'm just sharing the journey, and hopefully that inspire other people to choose to do hard things too as the way to grow. So
Well,
Instagram is the best.
I follow you there, and it's just Francois de Neuville,
Yeah,
right? Is
that's
that
what's my
your
name. Yeah,
Instagram? And so I'll
yeah.
put that in the show notes here. It's great
Thank you.
content, and like you said, yeah, you're not one of these. By the way, you're not one of these Instagram posters that's like constantly selling people stuff. You're literally
No,
just showing
yeah.
your cool stuff that you're doing, and it's. I mean, there's not many Instagram accounts that you'll see people like by themselves in the Amazon, right?
No, that's
So
true.
you get some cool stuff, but also you get some great thoughts and from yourself that
Yeah.
you're doing, and you've got a great book here, The Illusion of Time. So people
Thank you
can pick it
again.
up. I know it's on Amazon and maybe
Yeah,
other places, but for sure on Amazon. And
yeah,
it's really a great book to help us think more. I mean, there's been some different authors and people, speakers and things I've heard speak about time. I feel like you guys like this is one of the interesting topics to help us all, because it's the one thing that we all share. Like I said, it doesn't matter where we live, how much money we have, whatever. We all share something in common. We only have so much time, and we don't know how much is left.
Absolutely.
And it's not really that much, and we're just literally living in a speck of time in terms of the in terms of the history of time, right?
Yeah.
Like we're just a little speck. We're going to be gone before you know it. So you might as well lean in and live your life to a full potential, no regrets. And so you're an example of that, and thanks for being an inspiration to that. Thanks also for being a featured innovator in the Fearless Journeys community and helping to coach some other people in the community on that, on these concepts. And we hope to engage with you more in the future. Francois, we're speaking of time, we're running out of time for this podcast because we only have so much time to talk to you. But what any final last thoughts, messages you want to leave with our audience?
Yeah, just to remember that one day we're going to die and we don't know when that is. So take risks, be bold, and play big.
I love it. I love it. Well, Francois, thanks for being on the Agents of Innovation podcast, and thank you for
Francisco.
being an agent of innovation.
Thank you, my
We'll talk to you
pleasure.
soon.
Cheers.